Every time I went and spent like a significant amount on a hotel room for one night, I was like, okay, I'm manifesting that I'm gonna make this back times 2, times 3 sales, which I pretty much did every single time. So it'll be really fun to go through all of that with you guys. Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. I'm Amy from Ravello Nutrition, and if you're new around here, welcome. I'm so glad that you're here. I am an online course creator at this point. Over the past 5 years, I've created about 8 different online courses in a bunch of different industries, and now I teach thousands of people every single day how to create their own profitable online course. But today's video is going to be slightly different. I'm really excited about it because those of you who have been following me for a while know that this past summer, I actually took 2 months basically off of working, and I traveled around Europe for that entire time. And so I thought, because I get questions all the time from people asking me, you know, what were my favorite places in Europe? How much did I spend at different hotels? Where would I go back? Which places did I not like? All those types of things. I get those questions all the time from you guys. I thought it would be fun to kind of go through the itinerary of everywhere my husband and I went this summer and how much we spent at every hotel, if I thought it was worth it or not, because a lot of them were quite pricey, and what the return on my investment was. So not only the total amount that I spent traveling the entire summer, but the amount that my business actually was still able to generate during that time, which I think was such a mindset shift for me. So now let's just get into it. We started the trip, and I'm gonna say we throughout this because my husband Eric came with me. He also takes my photos and does some of my videos. So it was really nice to have him like help me create content during that time. Even though I wasn't actively like working, I never sat down on my computer and was like actively working, but I still was taking social media content during that time. So we started the trip in London. We stayed at the Sheraton Park Lane in London, which was about $600 a night. We stayed there for about 3 nights. So definitely not like a crazy bougie hotel experience or anything like that, but it was in a good location. It was good for the, the 2 nights that we were there. We really were just kind of using London because it was a really cheap flight into Europe. I think we got business class tickets from LA to London. Lay flat seats, amazing, for like $2,000 each. So Eric and I just figured, let's save a little bit of money, fly into London, and then take the train to Paris, which was the next location. And I've been to London before and I love London, but I felt like it was kind of, we used it as like just a little bit of a recovery before we got to Paris, because Paris is just my favorite place in the world. So after London, then we took the train, like I said, to Paris, which was a high-speed train. I think it only took like 2 hours, which was amazing. And we stayed in Paris for an entire week. So the first 5 nights in Paris, we actually stayed at a hotel called Hotel de Louvre. It was about $1,000 a night. And I will say, $1,000 a night, you might think that like that's kind of crazy, but honestly, for nice hotels in Paris that are a good size in a good location, that's actually pretty good price for Paris. So I highly recommend Hotel de Louvre if you're looking for something a little bit more budget friendly. Again, in a really good location, good size room, which is not common in Paris. I loved staying there. I thought it was a beautiful like entryway, and it was just the perfect spot for us to like go do all of our touristy things while we were in Paris. So we went to the Veuve Clicquot house and tried champagne. We obviously went to the Eiffel Tower, went shopping. I mean, I literally get chills when I think about it because I love Paris so much. So that was the first 5 nights. Then the last 2 nights of our trip in Paris, we went all out. We stayed at the Shangri-La, which is one of the most high-end 5-star hotels in Paris. So beautiful. Like, they just give you the most bougie treatment. It's the most beautiful grounds. You literally don't have to leave the hotel because the spa, the restaurants, the views, everything at the hotel are amazing. But obviously you're in Paris, so you probably will leave. But we totally splurged on one of their nicest suites. It was the duplex Eiffel Tower view suite, and it was $4,500 per night. So we figured since we saved a little on the first couple of days, we were gonna really splurge on the last couple of days in Paris. And you guys, honestly, it was 100% worth it. So it was almost like $10,000 for 2 nights at the Shangri-La. And of course they have like lower priced rooms available there. So don't feel like, if you wanna stay there, that you have to stay in that, epic suite that we stayed in. But that suite had an amazing view of the Eiffel Tower. It had its own balcony. It even had like, you could call up room service and they would come bring everything out onto the balcony for you and like set up heat lamps. And it was just like the most amazing experience ever. And for me, I knew we were gonna get a lot of social media content from that room, so definitely worth the investment in my opinion. If you can stay at the Shangri-La when you're in Paris, I highly recommend it. Okay, and now I promise I'm gonna give you guys my really honest opinion about all the places that we went, and hopefully nobody takes this personally if you're somebody from one of the countries or the places that I didn't really like. I'm not saying that, you know, there's anything wrong with that place. It's just my experience. Maybe I, you know, didn't plan it correctly, or maybe it was my vibe was off or something, but after Paris, we went to Amsterdam. We actually flew to Amsterdam. And I have to be honest, Amsterdam just wasn't really for me. I feel like I could see it being a definite vibe if you know, maybe if I was like in college and much more of like a partier and I wanted to like go to experience all the things that Amsterdam has to offer. I'm not really into that at this point. Also, the weather was kind of gray and cold, and it's actually quite small. So we stayed there for 3 nights, I think, and kind of walked around, ate at a few restaurants, saw some of the sights, but I was definitely, after 3 days, I was like, yeah, I'm ready to go. And I'm not gonna name the hotel that we stayed at because I didn't really love it. So I'm gonna leave it at that for Amsterdam. I'm not the person to follow if you need Amsterdam recommendations. Okay, next on the list, we went to Venice. Venice is another place on my list, like Paris, that I was fully ready to like splurge on because I knew that I've been there before. It's one of the most beautiful places. It's so romantic, everything's so beautiful, and it's worth the money, in my opinion. And in order to stay on the Grand Canal, which is like the biggest canal in Venice, that's where like most of the shopping is, most of those hotels are 5-star hotels. So there's really limited availability. Venice is not a huge city. And when we booked this trip, which was very last minute, there weren't a lot of options. So I think we had tried to book the St. Regis on the Grand Canal, which is absolutely beautiful and like probably $4,000 to $5,000 per night. That was not available. So we ended up booking a place called Gritti Palace, which is kind of just such a weird name to me, like Gritti Palace. But I also have a Marriott Bonvoy card, which is kind of like a member rewards program for Marriott hotels, which is a hot tip if you're looking to get like a bunch of points, especially if you're using a business card. Highly recommend the Marriott Bonvoy card. I have that card, and I looked on the app, and the Gritti Palace was actually listed as one of the hotels under the Marriott Rewards program. So I figured, you know, I'm not sure how I feel about the photos, but if Marriott says it's good, then I trust them. And you guys, I got there and it was like I had stepped into Bridgerton, like full on Bridgerton vibes. It's not my normal aesthetic. Like, it was very kind of almost gaudy, but like in a way that I absolutely loved. Like, it was so fancy. I felt like I was a queen, and the rooms were about $3,500 per night, but honestly, it was 100% worth it in my opinion. It was so beautiful. The restaurant at the hotel was right on the Grand Canal. See the canal, all the boats going by, the vaporettos, the gondolas. It was just so magical. We stayed there for 3 nights, and so if I went back again, which I know I will at some point because I absolutely love Venice, I would definitely stay at the Gritti Palace again. I also would maybe stay at the St. Regis. We went to the St. Regis and had cocktails one night, and it was also really beautiful. So highly recommend both of those if you are in Venice. Okay, I love that this is going kind of like up and down. I'm giving you guys like a place that I absolutely loved and then a place that I'm like, not my favorite. Okay, so the next on my list is actually Lake Como, which I was really kind of disappointed in because I have seen some people travel to Lake Como and have the most beautiful photos, but I think there's a few ways that I kind of went wrong with the planning here. So number one, on Lake Como, there's a bunch of different cities that you can travel to by boat. We stayed in actually the city of Como, which I learned after the fact is really not the vibe. Like, you don't want to stay in Como. That's like where the boats kind of like come in and dock. It's not very pretty. There really aren't a lot of good restaurants. Wouldn't really recommend it, honestly. But if you take the boat further north, there's a couple different towns called Bellagio or Tremezzo. Those 2 towns are a lot more bougie, a lot more restaurants. Again, they're still really small, but if you're gonna be staying there, I highly recommend staying in one of those 2 towns. Honestly, the hotel that we stayed at, I think was still like $800 a night in Como, and I really was not impressed. Even like the photos online showed something very different than when we got there. So just FYI, I'm not gonna name the hotel, but I would highly advise not to stay in Como. There are a couple of hotels that I really, really would recommend. And again, we didn't book these because we booked the trip so last minute that there wasn't any availability at these. Grand Hotel Tremezzo is the name of one of them that looks absolutely amazing. So that was on our list. Again, wasn't available, but if you're gonna go to Lake Como, I think that there's a way to do it that's gonna be way better than how we did it. I'm not ruling that out. I definitely would go back to Lake Como if we had a different experience, because when we did take the boat to those other towns that I mentioned, It was amazing. It was beautiful. I loved it. I think also though, people are either like a lake person or an ocean person, and I personally am way more of an ocean vibe of a person. So maybe if you're like a lake person, you probably would like a Lake Como vibe rather than like a Positano vibe. Just throwing that out there, okay? This is my honest opinion. Don't get mad at me, okay? This is just how I feel. Okay, so after Lake Como, we went to Milan. It wasn't really, you know, meant to be like a bougie experience or anything like that. It was kind of just traveling through because we were going from Lake Como, which is the north of Italy, from there to Tuscany. So we kind of had to stop a few places since those are pretty far apart. But Milan is a really fun city. I mean, obviously it's a major metro city. It's very like fashion forward. There's a lot of shopping. The Duomo is like a big, beautiful church there, but you really don't need longer than I would say maybe 2 days there. We just stayed over for a night and I thought that was perfect. Again, I'm not gonna name the hotel there because it wasn't memorable, but don't worry. So the ones that I don't actually tell you guys the name of or the price, I'm still going to include that in the final breakdown of exactly how much I spent this summer. So just know that that number is still being accounted for. I just don't think it's really relevant since I'm not recommending that you stay there. Okay, after Milan, we went to Siena. So Siena is a small town in Tuscany. It's really beautiful. Highly recommend going there and staying there for a couple of days. It's kind of more of a actual city in Tuscany where you can do like some shopping, find some restaurants in like a concentrated area. Whereas the rest of Tuscany is very like farmland spread out, and it's not walkable at all. Like you definitely need a car. So the place that we stayed in Siena was called Residencia de Poca Campo Reggio. It was very small. It was kind of like a tiny little Airbnb or VRBO type of place. I think there was only 4 rooms in the entire like hotel, if you could even call it that. It was about $600 a night, and we only stayed there for 1 night, again, on our way to Tuscany. It was beautiful, it was really cute. It was kind of like staying at your grandma's house. That's how I would explain it. Like antique-y, they had a beautiful like European breakfast buffet in the morning, but it definitely was like on the older side. It was very small. I wouldn't have wanted to stay there for longer than like a night because we just didn't really have any space. Okay, next up is Tuscany. Oh, you guys, Tuscany, again, was amazing. I am already like, I cannot wait to go back to Tuscany. I think there's a part of me deep in my soul that's like a farm girl. Like I wanna live on a farm and have farm animals and like have chickens and live in a Tuscan farmhouse, basically, and like milk my cow every morning. Anyways, that's beside the point, but all I'm saying with bringing that up is that Tuscany really has that like that vibe, but in a much more bougie way. So the place that we stayed at in Tuscany is called Castello di Casole. It's actually a Belmond hotel, which I learned during this trip. Belmond hotels are 10 out of 10 amazing. Like you cannot go wrong if you're staying in a Belmond. They are luxury price point, I would say, but fully 1000% worth it. So the Tuscany actually is nice though, because compared to a lot of other European cities, it's actually pretty affordable for what you can get. There's many farmhouses that include like every meal for very reasonable price. This one was about $1,700 a night, and we stayed there for 4 nights. So again, I will add that to the tally here. What I would say is that it was so beautiful. If you're in Tuscany and you want to explore the surrounding towns, you definitely need to have a car because again, like I said, it's not walkable, but Eric and I actually did not leave the hotel, or I guess maybe you would call it like a farmhouse. It didn't really feel like a hotel, but there was a beautiful pool. The grounds around it were amazing. We did wine tasting. We rode bikes. We just like, oh, we had a picnic one day and they like created a picnic basket for us. We just like sat on one of the hills by the farmhouse and just had like a 3-hour lunch. I mean, it's just the most, for Italy, you have to go to Tuscany. Highly recommend that hotel. Okay, after that, I'm laughing because the next place I'm definitely not going to advise that you stay. From Tuscany to Ravello, we actually stayed 1 night in Naples, which is a very busy Italian city. Honestly, it reminded me of the same type of vibe as like Bangkok, Thailand. That's how crazy it was. We only stayed there, obviously, like I said, 1 night traveling through to the next place that we were going, but personally, wasn't for me, don't need to go back there. Okay, so after Naples, we then went to Ravello. Ravello is a much smaller, less known town before you get to Positano. So Positano is like the iconic Instagram shot that everybody gets on the Amalfi Coast. So we did go to Positano too, but on our way there, we stopped in Ravello. which is like a cliff top town. So beautiful. And we stayed at another Belmond hotel. This one is called the Caruso, and this one was also much more expensive than Tuscany. It was about $3,500 a night, and we stayed there for 3 nights. You guys, I don't think my engagement on Instagram has ever been so high as when we stayed at this hotel when I showed the view, because it was incredible. 1000% would stay there again. And Ravello, at least where we stayed, we didn't need a car because you could actually walk around the town. The town is pretty small, but since we were only there for a couple of days and there were so many beautiful spots around the resort that we just stayed at the resort again. That's kind of our vibe. Went to the pool, walked into the town one day, took photos, went to the spa, just relaxed, ate the amazing buffet breakfast. I mean, highly recommend, honestly. I mean, I'm gonna tell you guys my thoughts on Positano as well. But if you're somebody who wants that kind of Amalfi Coast vibe, but not the crazy tourism, and you want peaceful serenity, beauty, you have to go to Ravello, okay? After Ravello, and just a little side note here, if you're planning on doing like a similar trip, highly recommend having a driver drive you from Ravello to Positano or anywhere that you're going along the Amalfi Coast. Do not try and rent a car because the roads are crazy, and trust me, it's a little bit more expensive to have a driver take you, but you do not want to be, I'm telling you, like, you do not want to be trying to navigate those roads yourself. I highly recommend having somebody else do it for you. I mean, there was like huge pileups of cars. Just trust me on this. You want to get a driver if you're transporting yourself down the Amalfi Coast, okay? So next stop was Positano. It was about an hour-and-a-half drive from Ravello. Again, we had a private driver. I think it was about $100 for the private driver, so totally worth it in my opinion. And the next place we stayed in Positano was called Villa Fiorentino. It was like a little family-owned villa. I'm trying to decide how I want to explain this. It was not bad. It also wasn't my favorite place ever. It was about $1,000 a night, and honestly, again, by the time we booked this trip, it was one of the last options available in Positano that had that iconic view. Maybe I will show like a picture of it right here, what I'm talking about, but I really wanted to have that, like, what you see on Instagram, Positano iconic view from where we were staying, and this was literally the only place left in Positano that had that view during the days that we were gonna be there. So we just went for it. The room was kind of like old school and sort of like had some weird vibes to it, like bright blue everything. But the people that owned the villa were extremely nice, so helpful. It was $1,000 a night, and we had booked 5 nights, which I will come back to in a second. We had like a balcony off of our room, which was amazing. And I really liked Positano, honestly. Some of the downsides were, I will say, it was extremely busy. Pretty hard to go to dinner anywhere unless you have a reservation, so everywhere was really busy. The beaches were just absolutely packed, but having said that, it was still an amazing experience. It also was really hot, so if you're not somebody who likes heat and crowds, it might not be for you, or maybe you want to go like more during downtime, like I think maybe September or even early summer, so like May might be better for you. I don't really mind, you know, the heat very much, but I also will say nobody has ever told me that there are so many stairs in Positano. I mean, it makes sense because if you think about the way that the city's built, it's like built up. So in order for you to get from like your hotel down to the beach and where all like the beach clubs and the restaurants are, it's a really intense amount of hiking and stair climbing. Like, I have never been so sweaty and felt like I got such a good workout, like anywhere that I've ever traveled. If you are gonna go to Positano, I also highly recommend taking like a private boat out. I think we did a private like 3-hour boat, and it was one of my favorites parts of the trip, honestly. It was just so amazing. He took us to like different spots. We jumped in the water. After Positano, we went to Capri, which is a little island off the coast of Italy. I think it's technically still Italy, but it's just a smaller island. I, again, absolutely loved Capri. I loved it even more than Positano. It was less touristy, at least in the area that we stayed. I know there's kind of 2 different areas of Capri. There's like, it's a small island, like I said. So right where like all the boats come in and everything, there's kind of a more touristy area. It's almost, I've heard it be referred to as like the Beverly Hills of Italy. Lots of really bougie shopping, which is amazing to visit. I didn't really want to stay in that location, so we actually stayed up on the hill in a little town called Capri, which I highly recommend. There's amazing, amazing views from there. And it's also pretty walkable. So you can either walk around that town or you can take like little tuk-tuks. I don't think they're actually called that in Italy, but they're like these little drivers that'll take you like down into the main area. We stayed at a hotel called Ceasar Augustus, which is one of the most famous 5-star hotels on Capri, and I highly recommend staying there. It was just so epic. So we stayed in 2 different rooms because we had originally booked 5 nights in Positano. After 4 nights in Positano, all the walking, all of the heat, all of the people, and the room that I wasn't like fully in love with, I was like, I'm ready to like go to the next place. So we actually paid for 5 nights, but we left 1 night early to go to Capri. So we ended up staying 2 nights in a less nice room in Capri at Ceasar Augustus. It was about $1,500 a night. Again, it was still amazing. I'm just saying, like, in comparison, the first room was kind of small. It had just a little balcony. The second room for the next 2 nights was about $3,500 a night, and it was freaking epic. I'm talking wrap around, like, balcony of a massive room, which had the most beautiful, like, I can't even talk right now, had the most beautiful view that, like, I've ever seen. So I'm gonna insert obviously a bunch of pictures and show you guys, but it was incredible. If you have a chance to go to Capri, highly recommend Ceasar Augustus. They also have some really, really good restaurants there. The pool was amazing. So much good wine. I wanna go back. Okay. So after Capri, and just a little more info about like kind of how we structured this trip, is that we knew that certain places in Europe were gonna be really epic and like a lot more activity in terms of like what we were doing tourist-wise or the amount of content that we were getting, which honestly does get a little bit tiring. So we kind of broke it up. After Capri, Positano, Ravello, Tuscany, those were very content-heavy places. And I was like, I need to just like sit and not do anything for a couple of days. So after that, we stayed in Rome. And I have also been to Rome before. I like Rome. Again, it's like a busy city, but there weren't really, like I had been to a lot of the tourist attractions like the Colosseum and stuff before. So I kind of wanted to just hang out in Rome, get some like Uber Eats because it was a big city, and just get a little bit of like admin work done. And it really, where we stayed in this part of the trip really allowed me to do that because, again, I used my Marriott Bonvoy card. We booked the St. Regis in Rome, which is not an inexpensive hotel by any means. The room that we booked was about $1,500 a night, and it was a basic room, super beautiful, but it didn't have anything like super crazy. Because we were using the Marriott Bonvoy card and they knew that I had been like a loyal customer, I guess, I don't know what it's called, they upgraded us to a room that was about $5,000 a night. That would have been $5,000 a night. So basically we paid $1,500 a night and we stayed there for 4 nights in a room that would have been $5,000 per night. And it came with its own butler service. So anytime we wanted anything, like I think when we first got there, I really wanted a green juice. So I like called the butler and I was like, can you bring me a green juice with celery, cucumber? And they brought it up to our room, you guys. It was insane. And although I will say we used Rome as kind of like a reset to like do laundry, get a little bit of work done, those types of things rather than explore, I think if you've never been to Italy before, Rome is actually a really cool city to visit for at least a couple of days. And if you're gonna be there, get the Marriott Bonvoy card and stay at the St. Regis. Trust me, okay? Also, their breakfast is insane. I learned over the summer that buffet breakfasts are literally my favorite thing in the entire world. Okay, next after Rome, we went to Greece. So we flew into Athens, stayed in Athens 1 night. Not a place for me, again, that I didn't really enjoy. It was 1 quick night. I don't need to go back there again. Personally, I love the islands much more than Athens. So after Athens, then we flew to Santorini. Santorini, again, I had been there before, but I freaking loved it. It's so beautiful. Again, ocean, beachy, blue water vibes. So the first 3 nights in Santorini, we stayed at the Andronis Luxury Suites, which was about $3,500 a night for that room that we had. There are Andronis hotels all over Santorini. Most of them they look really nice. This one I really loved because it was kind of like the traditional cave house style, like hotel, I guess, that's really typical in Santorini, and I wanted that vibe. But I also loved that our room had its own like pool and deck overlooking the beautiful, I think, what is it called? The view is called the Caldera view, I think, where you're seeing like the traditional, you know, what you think of when you think of Santorini, this is the view that you think of. It's in a town called Oia, which is O-I-A. If you're going to Santorini, highly recommend staying there. It's a very walkable town. You can walk all around and it's pretty small. I would say You know, you probably don't need more than like 3 or 4 days there, but it's really beautiful, so relaxing. 1000% would stay at this hotel again. So many hotels there have their own private pool, like on the balcony, which is amazing. So after 3 nights there, we actually went to another town in Santorini that was about 30 minutes away. I can't remember the exact name of the town. It definitely was less touristy, but I really actually liked it. And this time we stayed at a hotel called Cavo Tagu. I saw a lot of influencers staying at this hotel and it looked amazing, so I really wanted to go there. And the one thing I will say about this area of the island where Cavo Tagu was is that it's way less expensive than Ia. Ia is, I think, kind of over popularized from social media and everybody goes there, so the prices are jacked up. But if you're looking for still a really bougie, luxurious, amazing view experience in Santorini, Cavo Tagu was very similar. It had, well, I wouldn't say very similar. It was not quite as epic for sure, but it still had our room in this one had its own private pool, still really nice, just not the same level of epicness. And it was $1,000 a night and we stayed there for 2 nights. So I'll add that to the tally. Another thing I'll say about Cavo Tagu was that it was a lot more modern. Like the restaurant there was very modern. It was really comparable to like a really nice place here in LA, which I thought was really fun. Like food was really good, the view was amazing. It definitely like, Greece kind of has a little bit of a party vibe. I've also been to Mykonos. I like Santorini better. Mykonos is a little bit more on the party side, but it's definitely still like a fun vibe if you're gonna go. Another thing that I will say that people don't tell you about Greece, especially the islands though, is that it's extremely windy. Like every time I've been there, it's been extremely windy. But if you stay in Ia, because of where it's located on the island, it's kind of protected by 2 big mountains. I don't know, but you're blocked really from the wind, which makes it a lot more of an enjoyable experience, at least for me. Okay, after Santorini, we went to Madrid. So Madrid was another kind of stopover type of place. We got a ton of content from Santorini, so wanted to, again, take a couple of days to organize all of our social media content, do a little bit of admin work, talk to my assistant back home, things like that. We stayed at the Edition Hotel in Madrid, which is another of the Marriott hotels. So I got more points there, which was very fun, for about 4 nights. And it was about $500 a night. Super nice hotel, really bougie. All Edition hotels kind of have this really spa-like interior design, which I really love. It's very zen, very spa. It smells good. I love Edition hotels. There's one here in West Hollywood that I really like as well. But yeah, so that was fun. I mean, Madrid, honestly, not my favorite city, but I did like the Edition hotel, so that's why I'm shouting it out here. Okay, next after Madrid, we flew to Marrakech, Morocco, which is not technically in Europe, but I got inspired to go to La Mamounia in Marrakech, and this is so funny, but from the show Inventing Anna on Netflix. I'm sure you guys have seen it probably, but they stayed at La Mamounia, and I've also seen a lot of influencers stay there and just get the most epic, beautiful photos. And although I kind of heard mixed things about like the safety of Morocco, I heard really good things about this hotel specifically, and I really wanted to experience it. Eric is actually Moroccan, believe it or not, so I also thought it was really cool that we spent so much time in Italy, which is my heritage, to like go to Morocco as well. One of our guides even told him like, yeah, you do look Moroccan. I was like, does he? Anyways, so La Mamounia, during the summer when we went, this is a hot tip by the way, you do not want to go to Morocco in July. I don't know what we were thinking. I really didn't think about the fact that it's fucking Africa and it's going to be hot as hell there. I still had a great time, but I'm just throwing it out there. It's very hot during that time. I think they said their busy season at the hotel is like December, January, because it's cooler. But so it was about 110 degrees every day that we were there. And it was about $800 a night because we were there in the off season. That was a pretty like good price for a lot of their rooms there. I think they go up to like $2,000 a night in the busy season. But honestly, this again was one of those types of experiences where like you don't really even need to leave the hotel if you don't want to, because there's so much to do. There was a YSL store, which you guys know that I love, inside the hotel. So you could shop luxury. There was also like a Dior. There's really good restaurants. I think they had like 4 different cuisines of restaurants at the hotel. Amazing pool. We did actually leave the hotel this time because I obviously have never been to Morocco and I wanted to go actually experience like the spice markets and things like that. So one of the days we did a tour. Highly recommend that. And if you're staying at La Mamounia, they can actually set you up with like a tour guide. which I highly recommend. It was actually a really great experience. Okay, so after Marrakech, I will say I got a little bit of a stomach bug in Marrakech. I think I maybe drank some of the water, which I don't think you're supposed to do. It's kind of like a Mexico situation, like you're not supposed to drink the water there, and I felt pretty sick. This is also the time of the trip when I started to feel just really exhausted and burnt out. We had been traveling for almost 2 months at this point, and I was just tapped out. I was like, honestly, I kind of want to cut the trip short, but I feel so guilty because we've already spent all this money on these beautiful hotels. The end of the trip was the place that I wanted to go to the most, and I've actually never been, which was south of France. So after Marrakech, we went to Nice, France, and stayed in, again, there was like pretty much no options left at this point. So we stayed in a Hyatt, which was okay. I think it was a Hyatt. It was nothing to write home about. I think it was like 400, 500 a night. Nice was not my favorite, honestly. I mean, it was still pretty and it's still France, so it's still kind of bougie, but after Nice, we went to Saint-Tropez. Now, Saint-Tropez is 1000% my vibe. Saint-Tropez is where you wanna go. It's where all the really bougie beach clubs are. Again, like Rodeo Drive level shopping, all of the high-end designer stores. I mean, there's like a huge Chanel that has like a garden and it's just the most beautiful. Oh my gosh, I could live in south of France, honestly. And every restaurant is so good. So again, not a lot of options for hotels by the time we booked it, but we stayed at this little boutique hotel called Hotel Le Yaca, which I would actually really recommend. It was pretty inexpensive for Saint-Tropez, so it was about $1,000 a night. We stayed there for 5 nights, and I really would go back there again. It was so cute. The interior, like the design was really, really cute, and I don't know what else to say about it other than like, I love Saint-Tropez, and I cannot wait to go back. At that point though, I hate to say this even, but we left Saint-Tropez 1 night early to fly home because I was so exhausted and I was like, I literally cannot do this anymore. Like, I need to go home. I need to be in my own bed. I need to see my dogs. So luckily, the last place that we had booked, we only missed out on one place, Provence in south of France, which I still feel bad about, but luckily the hotel was really nice and gave us a credit to come back next year. So we're definitely going to be going back to Provence. But after that, I was like, I need to get home. So that was the end of our trip. To kind of summarize a few things, I will say, number one, best decision I ever made in my life to travel for 2 months straight. Not only was it just super relaxing, so much fun, even though I got so tired at the end, 1000% would do it again. And another thing, just more on like the money side of things, is that I was really actually, even though at this point my business is well established, I've been hitting 6-figure months for over 2 years now. So it's not like things are really fluctuating that much, but there was still a part of me, like mindset wise, who was like, you can't take 2 months off from like working. Your sales are gonna go down. You're gonna lose people from your audience or whatever. And it was such a good reminder doing this, proving to myself that like, no, actually the way that you've set up your business, the more you travel, actually, the more money that you make, the more that you relax, and the more fun that you have, the better your business does, because this is the way that you've set up your business. And like, how freaking cool is that? How many people can actually say that? So I felt really lucky. And another mindset thing too is I was kind of scared. Some of the prices on these hotels, like, don't get me wrong, I realized that they are more than like some people make in a month on one night at a hotel. Definitely that's true for me before I started my business. And like, really kind of stretching my comfortability of how much I was willing to spend per night was really interesting, because I noticed definitely a correlation. Like, the more willing I was to spend a lot of money and knowing like, okay, I'm spending $4,000 a night on this hotel, but it's beautiful. It's gonna give me content that I can use for the next year on Instagram. It's gonna result in probably 3 to 5 online course academy sales. I would recoup every single time I spent that much money. I would make that same amount, if not more, times 3, times 5 back in course sales. Such a good tangible example of manifestation and like the fact that money is meant to be circulated, and when you invest in something that feels good and is like what your higher self wants and it's in alignment with you, it'll come back to you. Like, the more you hold on and don't spend your money, it can't flow. It can't come back into your life. So it has really made me, again, this is like a lifelong learning lesson for me, but the more I get comfortable with spending, the more money I make. The more money I spend, the more money I make. And it's happened every single time I have a big investment. When I bought my G-Wagon, same thing happened. When I traveled this summer, same thing happened. So let me give you guys a full breakdown, because I know that's what you're wanting. I'm gonna put it on the screen right here. The exact total, I pulled up the bank statements. We are at about $100,000 for 2 months of bougie travel, which I would say honestly was less than I had planned to spend. I had given myself a budget of like $2,000 a day and we spent below that. It was about 100,000. So spent 100,000 during those 2 months. Here I'm going to show the 2 months revenue reports of the months that I was traveling. So June, July, which as you can see, shows a net profit of about $300,000. So definitely this is your sign to travel and invest. Maybe your business is different than mine. Maybe investing in travel like is not the same for you, but whatever it is that's going to, maybe feels a little bit scary, but like you want to do, just know that if your business is structured a certain way, like those investments can come back tenfold. So yeah, if you guys want to learn more about how to create your own online course, no matter what industry you're in, I'm going to link a free masterclass below this video. And just FYI, if you're watching this and you're like, oh, I'm not a nutritionist or I don't have anything to teach, don't worry. We've had over 2,500 students in all different industries. I'm talking hairstyling, real estate, design, web design, business coaching, photography, like motherhood, homemaking. I could go on and on. There's literally so many different profitable course topics. So whatever experience, life experience you have, I can help you turn it into a profitable online course. So highly recommend checking out the free training below, watch it, let me know if you have any questions, and I would love to have you inside Online Course Academy so that maybe next summer you can, be traveling the world with me, okay? I will see you guys in the next video. Thanks so much for watching. Bye.